Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Right now, the European auto industry is going through a transformation that is so chaotic and so unpredictable, it honestly looks less like a traditional business transition and way more like a high-stakes casino. The biggest giants in the industry, the brands you literally see on the road every single day, have placed wildly different survival bets on the table. They're all facing this incredibly challenging transition to electric vehicles, and as we look at the landscape today in 2026, well, those massive gambles are being called. Some are trying to build entirely new empires completely from scratch, some are penny-pinching just to survive, and others have literally split their companies right down the middle. Okay, let's quickly run through our agenda for today. First up, the great EV gamble. Second, Volkswagen, the vertical empire. Third, Stellantis, efficiency meets reality. Fourth, BMW and Mercedes, premium status. Fifth, Renault, the agile innovator. And finally, number 6, the 2026 reality check. All right, let's dive into section 1, the great EV gamble. To really understand this, you have to picture the current market as a massive, unpredictable storm. The old days of simply designing a car, dropping a gas engine into it, and selling it at a nice steady profit, those days are completely gone. Every single automaker has to choose a distinct route to avoid sinking, all while dealing with high inflation, super volatile battery supply chains, and fierce new competitors. I love how one of our sources perfectly put it. Volkswagen behaves like a giant trying to change course in a storm. Stellantis acts as the agile navigator. It's a great analogy because everyone is staring down the exact same storm, but they are charting completely opposite courses to get through it.
Which brings us to section 2, Volkswagen and their vertical empire.
So Volkswagen didn't just want to survive this storm, right? They wanted to own the ocean. Their whole strategy revolves around building an integrated ecosystem. Basically, they view the future car as a computer on wheels. Because of that, they want to control absolutely everything, from the raw lithium in the battery cells all the way to the software operating system on the dashboard. Why go through all that trouble? So they never, ever have to hand over their data or their profit margins to external tech giants like Google or Apple.
But to pull this off, they had to make 2 incredibly expensive bets. First is CARIAD. This is their internal software division, and they were tasked with building a proprietary operating system completely from the ground up to handle everything from standard connectivity to full autonomous driving. Second is PowerCo. This is their massive push to build internal gigafactories. By producing battery cells themselves, VUM aims to drastically cut the cost of the EV's absolute most expensive component. The ultimate goal here is to dominate the mass market through just sheer massive economies of scale. But, as you might guess, building out an entire software and battery supply chain from scratch requires tens of billions in fixed capital. It is a massive, massive gamble.
Now let's contrast that with section 3, Stellantis, where efficiency meets reality.
Born from the mega merger of Fiat Chrysler and the PSA Group, Stellantis is the ultimate pragmatist. Their corporate philosophy is super simple. Every single euro spent absolutely must generate a maximum return. So step 1 for them, multi-energy platforms like the STLA1. Instead of building platforms strictly for electric vehicles that might not even sell, their chassis can host combustion, hybrid, or electric engines depending on what you, the consumer, actually want to buy on any given day. Step 2, they spread their research and development costs across their massive portfolio of brands. We're talking Fiat, Peugeot, Jeep, Opel, which improves their margins without bleeding cash the way VW does. And step 3, rather than inventing everything in-house, they formed a joint venture with the Chinese company Leapmotor to just import cheap, efficient EV technology. Essentially, they optimize what they already have, and they buy what they don't.
Moving on to section 4, BMW and Mercedes, and their premium status approach.
Think of these brands as the aristocrats of the auto industry. They aren't fighting in the mud to sell the most cars, they're fighting for massive profits on every single car they do sell. This whole model relies on something called capital density, meaning, sure, designing a cutting-edge luxury EV costs an absolute fortune, but their customers gladly pay premium prices that instantly absorb those massive R&D costs. Combine that with flexible iFactory lines that can build EVs, hybrids, or gas cars on the exact same assembly line, and they are heavily insulated against sudden shifts in the market. If EV demand suddenly drops off a cliff, no problem, they don't have to shutter a factory, they just shift the line back to hybrids. It's a very comfortable shield.
Next up is section 5, Renault, the agile innovator.
Renault's approach is this really dramatic shift away from traditional auto industry bloat. Instead of trying to dominate everything like VW or strictly penny-pinching like Stellantis, they practically unbundled their entire company to act like a nimble tech startup. They created a spinoff called Ampere, which is dedicated exclusively to EVs and software, keeping the books totally clean to attract tech investors. Meanwhile, a completely separate division called Horse continues to sell traditional combustion and hybrid engines just to generate the cash needed to fund Ampere. But honestly, the real genius here is their product strategy. They are leaning hard into nostalgia. They're bringing back legendary, iconic designs like the Renault 5 and the Renault 4 to target a massive sweet spot, highly desirable electric cars priced under 25,000 euros. They are going straight for the heart and the wallet of the European buyer.
And this brilliantly illustrates the philosophical divide we're talking about today. Look at Volkswagen's CARIAD, taking on the immense risk and astronomical cost of building an operating system entirely from scratch. Then look at Renault. They're taking the pragmatic route. They just partnered with Google to integrate Android Automotive. Renault knows they don't have VW's bottomless pockets, so they just buy reliable external tech rather than risking billions trying to reinvent the wheel and potentially failing.
All right, let's look at where this leaves us in Section 6, the 2026 reality check.
So, fast forward to early 2026, and the EV market is much, much colder than anyone anticipated. All these grand strategies have violently collided with reality. Just listen to this staggering number: 22 billion euros. That is the absolutely brutal estimated write-down Stellantis had to take. Even with all their flexibility and financial prudence, they fundamentally misjudged how fast the public would actually adopt electric vehicles. They scaled up their battery supply chains, anticipating a massive surge in EV demand that simply never arrived. Now they're left with stranded costs, literally billions of euros spent on factory capacity and raw materials that are just sitting there collecting dust.
So where does everyone stand today? Well, the picture is incredibly complex. Volkswagen is drowning in the massive fixed costs of their vertical integration, they're facing major CARIAD delays, and worst of all, they are losing crucial market share in China to incredibly fast native EV giants like BYD and Geely. Then you have Stellantis, who took that massive 22 billion euro hit, and by relying so heavily on external tech and hybrids, they actually risk lagging behind in next-generation software. Meanwhile, Renault, despite having to manage that super complex dual company split, is currently viewed by analysts as the smartest, most lucid player in the room. They didn't overextend, and they focused on what consumers actually want right now: affordable, desirable cars.
Which leaves us with a very provocative question. We have two very different paths: Volkswagen's massive structural bets versus Stellantis' agile multi-energy retreats, and yet both have led to the exact same crisis point in 2026. If Volkswagen actually survives this transition, they'll have a self-reliant, vertically integrated empire that literally nobody in Europe can match, but if they run out of cash first, their strategy becomes a cage of fixed costs. Stellantis protected their short-term margins, but they might find themselves technically outpaced. The 2026 reality proves there's no single winning strategy yet, only different flavors of survival. So who do you think will actually emerge victorious by 2030?
Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer today. The real value of deeply analyzing these corporate blueprints is that it shows us just how incredibly difficult the EV transition actually is behind the scenes. It's not just about swapping out engines for batteries. It's about fundamentally rewiring billion-dollar empires. We sincerely appreciate your time and your focus today. If you found this breakdown valuable, please let us know your thoughts on who is making the smartest bet in the comments, and we'll definitely keep the conversation going.